I never thought being blind would be my greatest advantage. But when you can smell emotions like perfume and detect poison in a wine glass across a crowded hall, blindness becomes the least interesting thing about you. The night I caught the scent of betrayal in the Alpha King's goblet at the Feast of Crowns, I had a choice. Stay silent and safe, or whisper 3 words that would change everything, but I leaned close to the Alpha King and whispered, "Don't laugh, someone poisoned your wine." I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to prevent a death I could smell coming. How was I supposed to know that saving him would nearly destroy us both? What would you risk to save someone who might be the only person in the world who truly sees you? If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. I was born different. My eyes never opened to the world, but my nose opened to everything else. While other wolves might smell dinner cooking, I smell the exact herbs in the broth, the age of the meat, the iron content in the water, and the anxiety of the cook who's afraid they've overseasoned it. I can smell a lie forming on someone's tongue before they speak it. I can smell sickness brewing in blood 3 days before symptoms appear. I can smell the shift in the air before a storm, the mood of the earth before a harvest, the fear in a warrior's sweat before battle. This gift has always been more of a curse. Strong scents don't just bother me, they cripple me. They slam into my skull like fists, dropping me to my knees with migraines that last for hours. When I was little, the other children discovered this weakness fast. They would toss handfuls of crushed spices in my face just to watch me collapse, crying and gasping. They would wave flowers under my nose until I vomited. They called me broken. They called me unnatural. They said a true Omega should be soft and pleasant and easy to understand, not a blind girl who could smell their secrets and recoiled from their touch. My parents loved me, but even they didn't know what to do. They tried everything. Herbs to dull my senses, breathing techniques, scarves soaked in mild scents to filter the air. Nothing worked. The village elders suggested I be sent away to a sanctuary for defective Omegas, a polite name for a place where people like me were hidden from view. My parents refused, but the whispers grew louder. People avoided our home. Children were warned to stay away from me, as if my strangeness might be contagious. By the time I turned 16, I made the choice myself. I couldn't live in a world that assaulted my senses every moment. I couldn't bear the pity, the fear, the disgust. So I found an abandoned cabin at the edge of the forest, half collapsed and forgotten. I rebuilt it with my own hands, guided by touch and sound and the memory of my father's carpentry lessons. I sealed every crack with mud and moss. I hung curtains made from plain, unscented cloth that I washed in cold stream water. I planted a garden of gentle herbs, lavender for calm, mint for clarity, chamomile for the headaches that never fully left. In my little sanctuary, I could finally breathe. The forest animals didn't judge me. Deer would eat from my hand, drawn by the stillness I carried. Birds nested near my windows, and their songs became my morning routine. I learned which mushrooms were safe by their earthy sweetness, which berries were ripe by their sugar-burst scent. I made my own soap from ash and fat with just a whisper of rosemary. I baked bread that I traded in the village for flour and oil, leaving it at the edge of town and collecting payment without ever speaking to anyone. I was alone, but I told myself I wasn't lonely. At least, that's what I whispered on the nights when the wind howled through the trees and my bed felt too wide, too cold, too empty for just one person. The village people took my bread, but they kept their distance. When I had to venture into town for supplies I couldn't make or grow, I would wrap a thick scarf around the lower half of my face and move quickly, eyes lowered. Not that I could see their stares, but I could feel them. I could smell their discomfort, their relief when I left. Mothers pulled their children close when I passed. Merchants counted my coins without touching my hands. I had built a life in my invisible bubble, safe from a world that had no place for a blind Omega who could smell too much. Then came the Feast of Crowns. Once each year by royal decree, every soul in the kingdom had to attend. Nobility, merchants, farmers, even outcasts like me. Missing the feast meant imprisonment or exile. So each year I would force myself to go. I would stand in the farthest corner of the great hall, press my back against the cold stone wall, and endure. I would count the minutes until the minimum required time had passed, then flee back to my forest before the sensory assault could fully break me. This year felt different from the moment I stepped through the towering doors. The hall was more crowded than I'd ever sensed it, packed with bodies radiating heat and sound and 1,000 competing scents. The air was suffocating, roasted meats dripping with fat, wine spiced with cinnamon and clove, perfumes layered so thick they formed a chemical fog. Women had woven flowers into their hair. Men had rubbed their wrists with crushed herbs to attract mates. Candles burned with tallow that smelled of old sheep. Fires roared in 3 hearths, filling the room with smoke that mixed with sweat and anticipation and barely controlled aggression. For me it was torture. Each smell clawed at the others, fighting for dominance in my head. My skull throbbed. My stomach twisted. I pressed myself against the wall and tried to breathe through the scarf I'd tied over my nose, dabbed with mint paste that did almost nothing against the onslaught. The noise was nearly as bad. Laughter like breaking glass, shouting, the clatter of plates and goblets, 3 groups of musicians playing different songs at once. I focused on the texture of the stone wall beneath my palms, on counting my breaths, on anything that might anchor me until I could escape. Then the room shifted. A wave of silence rolled from the entrance toward the back where I stood, and with it came a change in the air itself. Fear. Respect. Awe. The smells of 100 people straightening their spines and trying to appear worthy. Despite every instinct telling me to keep my head down, I turned toward the source of the disruption. The Alpha King had arrived. I couldn't see him, but I didn't need to. His presence moved through the crowd like a storm front, parting bodies without effort. I could hear the whisper of expensive fabric, the measured fall of boots on stone, the subtle shift of a crowd holding its collective breath. And then his scent reached me, cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. Forest after rain. Cold stone warmed by sunlight. Pine resin and something ancient beneath it, wild and clean and impossibly steady. For the first time since entering the hall, my head cleared. The migraine dulled. My breathing eased. His scent didn't assault me, it anchored me. I don't know what made him stop. I don't know what made him turn. But I felt the weight of his attention settle on me like a hand on my shoulder, and though I couldn't see his face, I knew, somehow I knew, that he was looking directly at me. The air between us hummed. My heart hammered against my ribs. The rest of the hall faded into white noise. There was only his scent, his presence, and the inexplicable pull I felt toward this stranger who wore a crown. Then someone whispered in his ear, and the moment shattered. The smells crashed back. Curiosity, confusion, jealousy from those who had witnessed the king's attention on the blind Omega in the corner. Panic clawed up my throat. I couldn't bear it. Questions. The stares I couldn't see but could feel like insects crawling on my skin. The whispers that would follow me for weeks. I slipped along the wall toward the side exit, my hands shaking as I pushed the door open and gulped the cold night air like a drowning woman breaking the surface. Ran. My feet knew the forest path by heart, even in darkness. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs trembled, until I reached my cabin and threw the bolt across the door. I was safe again. But as I sank into my chair by the hearth, wrapping myself in the silence I'd fought so hard to preserve, I realized something had changed. The memory of his scent lingered in my nose like a ghost. The weight of his attention still pressed against my chest. My sanctuary felt smaller now, emptier. For the first time in years, being alone didn't feel like peace. Felt like loneliness. Stop it, I whispered to myself, lighting a fire with trembling hands. He's the Alpha King. You're the broken Omega who can't even stand in a room with people. Nothing will come of one look. But 3 nights later, when a storm howled through the forest and someone pounded on my door with desperate fists, I would learn just how wrong I was. Because when I opened that door, the Alpha King himself would be standing there, poisoned, dying, and whispering my name. 3 nights after the feast, the storm came. I had smelled it building all day. The electric bite in the air, the way the wind shifted from east to north, carrying the scent of rain still miles away. By nightfall, the first drops were hammering against my roof like fists, and the forest had gone silent in that eerie way it does when animals seek shelter. I sat by my fire, grinding dried elderflower into powder, trying to ignore the way the storm made my small cabin feel even smaller, more isolated, more alone. Then came the pounding on my door. Not the rhythmic knock of a neighbor or trader. This was desperate, chaotic. Fists striking wood with the urgency of someone fleeing death itself. My heart lurched. No one came to my cabin. Especially not in a storm like this. Especially not at night. Please. A male voice, raw with panic and exhaustion. Please, if you're there, he's dying. I froze, my hand hovering over the mortar and pestle. Every instinct screamed at me to stay silent, to wait for them to leave. But that voice, there was something in it that bypassed my fear and went straight to my core. Genuine desperation. The kind that meant someone was truly out of options. I crossed to the door on shaking legs and lifted the bolt. The wind nearly tore the door from my hands. Rain lashed inside, bringing with it a flood of scents that made me stagger. Wet leather, horse sweat, blood, and beneath it all, something sickeningly familiar. That wrong, coiling bitterness I'd smelled in the king's wine cup 3 nights ago. Poison. Thank the gods. The man's voice was closer now, and I could hear the strain in it, the way his breathing came in ragged gasps. You're Myrene, aren't you? The one who warned him at the feast. Yes. My voice came out smaller than I intended. Who? Eldon. The king's advisor. He was moving now, dragging something heavy. When? He collapsed hours ago. The palace healers couldn't identify the poison. But before he lost consciousness, he kept saying your name. Over and over. Find Myrene. The blind Omega. She'll know. My breath caught. The king remembered my name. Had been thinking of me. Had asked for me while dying. Bring him inside, I heard myself say, stepping back. Quickly. Eldon half-dragged, half-carried King Thalen through my doorway, and the scent that came with him nearly brought me to my knees. That clean storm and pine scent I remembered from the feast was still there, but now it was buried under layers of wrongness. Fever, sweat, the metallic tang of blood, and woven through it all like a serpent, that same masked poison. Bitter root and rot disguised beneath something sweet. But there was another scent too. Molar. Younger. Fear so sharp it cut. There's a child with you, I said, my hands already moving to clear my small table, sweeping herbs and tools aside. From the kitchens. Eldon's voice cracked. Her mother died 2 days after the feast. Same symptoms. The girl started showing signs this morning. I didn't know where else to. Put him on the table. The child can sit by the fire. I was moving on instinct now, my hands finding jars by memory, my nose sorting through 100 scents at once. How long since he collapsed? 3 hours. Maybe 4. Eldon lowered the king onto my table with a gentleness that spoke of deep loyalty. His breathing keeps getting shallower. His fever won't break. The palace healers tried bloodletting, tried cooling baths, tried every antidote they know. Nothing worked. Because they were trying to treat symptoms without knowing the source. They couldn't smell what I could smell, that this poison wasn't just in his blood. It was in his lungs, his bones, coiled around his heart like a living thing, squeezing tighter with each breath. I moved to the table and placed my hands on either side of the king's head, leaning close. This near, his scent was overwhelming even through the poison. That steadiness I'd felt at the feast, now fractured and failing. His skin burned against my palms. Thalen, I whispered, not knowing if he could hear me. I'm here. I'm going to help you. A shudder ran through him. His lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear. I turned to where I could sense the child huddled by the fire. What's your name? Kira. The girl's voice was barely a whisper, thick with tears. Is he going to die like my mama? The question hit me like a physical blow. But I couldn't lie to her. Wouldn't. Not if I can help it. I straightened, my mind already cataloging what I needed. Eldon, I need you to listen very carefully. In the cabinet by the window, There are 3 glass jars on the second shelf. Bring them all. Then start water boiling in the pot over the fire. What are you going to do? He was already moving, trusting me without question. What the palace healers couldn't. I pulled down my hanging bundles of dried herbs, my fingers identifying each by texture and scent. I'm going to make them vomit up the poison before it reaches their hearts. The next hours blurred into a desperate rhythm of scent and memory and faith. I crushed charcoal for absorption, brewed activated bark for purging, added milk thistle for the liver and yarrow to slow the poison spread. My hands shook as I measured each ingredient by smell alone, knowing that too much of one thing or too little of another could kill them faster than the poison itself. The child went first. She was smaller, weaker, closer to the edge. I held her hair back as she retched into a basin, whispering reassurances I wasn't sure I believed. But slowly, painfully, the poison came up. Black and viscous and reeking of death. When she finally stopped shaking and her breathing eased, Eldon carried her to my bed and wrapped her in every blanket I owned. Then came Thalen. Getting a grown man, a king, an alpha, to swallow anything while unconscious was nearly impossible. I had to support his head, force his jaw open, pour the liquid down his throat in tiny amounts and pray he wouldn't choke. Eldon held him steady while I worked, murmuring apologies every time the king's body convulsed. "Come on," I whispered, my hands cradling his face. "Come on, Thalen. Fight it. You asked for me, I'm here. So fight." For terrible minutes, nothing happened. His breathing grew more labored. His fever climbed higher. I could smell the poison tightening its grip, feel the moment stretching thin like a rope about to snap. Then his body jerked violently. Eldon barely had time to turn him on his side before the king began purging the poison in great, wrenching heaves. I held him through it, one hand on his back, whispering encouragement, monitoring the scent of what came up. The first wave was worst, thick with poison. The second less so. The third came up clearer. When it finally stopped, Thalen collapsed back onto the table, gasping. But his breathing was easier. The fever was breaking. The coiled wrongness in his scent was unwinding. "He's going to make it," I breathed, sagging against the table. "They both are." Eldon made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "How did you? The healers said there was no antidote. They were treating the wrong poison." I was shaking now, the adrenaline draining away and leaving me hollow. This wasn't one toxin. It was 3 layered to mimic different illnesses. Separately, each one is treatable. Together they mask each other, hide from conventional antidotes. But I could smell them. All 3. Who would create such a thing? Eldon's voice was dark with fury. Someone who wanted it to look like natural causes. I moved to check on Kira. Her breathing was deep and even now, true sleep instead of unconsciousness. Someone with access to the royal kitchens. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "The council," Eldon spat. "It has to be. They've been pushing for more power, questioning every decision Thalen makes. But to poison him, to poison a child. Save the politics for later." I was suddenly exhausted, every bone in my body aching. Right now they need rest. And we need to make sure no one knows they're here. "Agreed." Eldon moved to the window, peering out into the storm. "I told the palace guard I was taking the king to a healer in the next territory. It should buy us a day, maybe 2. I nodded, then returned to Thalen's side. In the firelight, I could finally make out the shape of him. The strong lines of his face, the breadth of his shoulders, the way his hair fell across his forehead. My fingers moved before I could stop them, brushing those strands back. His hand caught my wrist. I gasped, nearly pulling away, but his grip was gentle despite its weakness. His eyes opened, those golden brown eyes I'd felt on me at the feast, and found mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "Myrene." My name on his lips was barely a whisper, rough from the vomiting, but it resonated through me like a bell. "You came. You saved me. Again." My throat closed. "You asked for me. How could I not? The healers said there was no hope." His thumb traced a small circle on the inside of my wrist, and I realized he could probably feel my racing pulse. But I knew, if anyone could smell death and turn it away, it would be you. Something warm unfurled in my chest, dangerous and terrifying. You should rest. The poison is out, but you're still weak. In a moment, he didn't release my wrist. First, I need to thank the woman who won't let me die. Even though I'm a stranger to her. You're not a stranger. The words escaped before I could stop them. I know your scent. It's the only one that doesn't hurt. His eyes widened slightly and I felt my face heat. Why had I said that? Why had I revealed something so intimate, so vulnerable? But instead of pulling away or laughing at the broken Omega's confession, Thalen's expression softened into something I couldn't name. You're the only person who's ever been able to stand close to me without fear, he said quietly. Do you know what that's like? To have everyone around you trembling or performing or trying to curry favor. But you, at the feast, you looked at me like I was just a person. You are just a person. I swallowed hard. A person someone tried to kill. And you stopped them. Twice now. His grip on my wrist tightened slightly. Why? You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me. I thought about lying. About giving him some noble reason or practical excuse. But something in his eyes demanded honesty. Because your scent calms me, I whispered. And I don't know why, and it terrifies me, but when you collapsed on my table tonight, I couldn't let you die. I couldn't let that scent disappear from the world. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The fire crackled. Rain drummed on the roof. Kira murmured in her sleep. And Thalen looked at me like I was something precious he'd found in the dark. I felt it too, he finally said. At the feast. When our eyes met. Like recognition. Like coming home. The words should have frightened me more. Should have sent me running. But instead, I found myself leaning closer. Drawn by that storm and pine scent that wrapped around me like a promise. This is insane, I breathed. You're a king. I'm the woman who saved my life. His eyes never left mine. The woman I can't stop thinking about. The woman who understands what it means to be alone in a room full of people. My heart hammered so hard I was certain he could hear it. Thalen. Sound outside made me freeze. Not the storm. Something else. Something deliberate. I pulled away from Thalen and moved to the window, my senses straining. There, beneath the rain and wind, footsteps. Multiple sets. Moving in a circle around my cabin. The scent hit me a moment later. Carried on a gust of wind. Armor oil. Horse leather. The particular blend of metals used in royal guard weapons. But underneath wrong. Or wrong. Not the clean discipline of loyal soldiers. This smelled of greed, fear, and grim determination. Eldon. My voice came out sharp and low. Someone's outside. Surrounding the cabin. He was at the window in an instant. His hand going to the sword at his hip. How many? 6. Maybe 8. I backed toward the table where Thalen was struggling to sit up. They're not palace guards. Or if they are, they're not loyal ones. Thalen's eyes met mine, and in them I saw the truth we both knew. The people who poisoned him had found us. And this time they weren't planning to leave any survivors. The attack didn't come in the night. They were smarter than that. They waited until dawn, when exhaustion had finally pulled me under, when Eldon had dozed off in the chair by the fire, when even Thalen's vigilance had surrendered to the weakness of his healing body. They waited until the storm had passed and the world had gone quiet and soft with that false peace that comes after violence. Then they struck. The door exploded inward with a crack like thunder. I jolted awake from where I'd been slumped against the wall, my heart already racing before my mind could catch up. The scents hit me like an avalanche. Armor oil, steel, horse sweat, and beneath it all, the acrid stink of men who'd ridden hard with dark purpose. Don't move. A voice I didn't recognize, sharp with authority and something uglier. Triumph. By order of the Royal Council, you are all under arrest. What? Eldon was on his feet, his sword half drawn before I heard the distinctive ring of multiple blades clearing their sheaths. "Drop the weapon, Eldon, or we'll cut you down where you stand." A different voice, this one cold and precise. "Leader." I could smell the expensive oils in his beard, the arrogance in his sweat. "You're outnumbered 8-1. Don't be a fool." The clatter of Eldon's sword hitting the floor made my stomach drop. "On what charges?" Thalen's voice cut through the chaos, and despite his weakness, despite the poison that had nearly killed him hours ago, there was steel in it. "Command. I am your king. You will answer to me." Harsh laughter. Multiple men. The sound of boots spreading out, surrounding us. I pressed myself against the wall, my hands searching for anything I could use as a weapon. A knife. Heavy jar. Anything. "King." The leader's voice dripped with mockery. "You're barely a man, Thalen. Weakened by poison, hiding in a hovel with a defective Omega and a kitchen brat. The council has decided you're unfit to rule. The council has no authority to. The council has every authority when their king has been bewitched." Boots struck the floor near me, close enough that I could smell the leader's breath, wine and something rotting between his teeth. "Isn't that right, blind girl? You poisoned him at the feast, then pretended to save him. Classic Omega manipulation. Make yourself indispensable. Make him think he needs you." "That's a lie," Eldon shouted. "She saved his life." "She." The sound of fist meeting flesh. Eldon's grunt of pain. His body hitting the floor. "Eldon." Thalen was moving, I could hear it, but his weakness betrayed him. More sounds of struggle. Too many men. Too many weapons. "Don't hurt them." I found my voice, though it came out smaller than I wanted. "Please, I'll do whatever you want, just don't." Hands seized me from behind, iron strong and bruising. I cried out as my arms were wrenched backward, rope biting into my wrists. I tried to pull away, tried to fight, but whoever held me knew exactly how to control a struggling Omega. Pain lanced through my shoulders as they forced me to my knees. "Look at you," the leader said, and I could hear him circling me like a predator. "The great seer who can smell poison. The miracle worker. And you can't even see the men about to destroy you." I memorized his scent, the specific blend of armor oil he used, the type of soap on his skin, the distinctive smell of the tobacco he chewed. Every detail, every marker. If I survived this, I would know him anywhere. "Commander Rice." Thalen's voice was strained but furious. "You will release them. Or I swear to the gods." "You'll what?" Rice's boots stopped in front of where they held Thalen. I could hear the king's labored breathing, could smell fresh blood where they'd struck him. "You can barely stand. The poison should have killed you. Would have if this little witch hadn't interfered. But don't worry, we'll finish what we started." "No." The scream came from the corner. I'd forgotten about Kira. "Leave him alone. Leave them alone." "Ah, the kitchen rat." Rice's voice turned sickeningly sweet. "The unfortunate witness. Don't worry, child. You'll be joining your mother soon enough. Don't you touch her." I thrashed against my bonds, ignoring the way the rope cut into my wrists. "She's a child she has nothing to do with." The backhand caught me across the face, snapping my head to the side. Pain exploded across my cheek, and I tasted blood. The room spun, and for a moment, all I could smell was copper and my own fear. "Myrene!" Thalen's roar shook the cabin. And with it came something else, a wave of power so intense it made the air pressure change. Alpha authority, raw and absolute, the kind that made lesser wolves drop to their knees and bare their throats. Even through my pain, even blind, I felt it wash over me. Not oppressive like I'd always imagined alpha power would be, but protective. Fierce. A storm rising to defend what was his. The men holding Thalen grunted with effort. I heard bodies hit the wall. Someone cried out. For a moment I dared to hope. "Wolfsbane!" Rice barked. "Now!" The smell hit my nose at the same moment Thalen's power flickered and died. That distinctive bitter sweetness, concentrated enough to paralyze a shifting wolf. Thalen's choked gasp told me they'd forced it down his throat. "No more heroics, Your Majesty." Rice sounded breathless but satisfied. "Save your strength. You're going to need it for what comes next. What are you going to do with us?" My voice shook, but I forced the words out. Forced myself to keep cataloging scents, sounds, details. Anything that might help later. There was a later. The king and the child are coming with us. Back to the capital. To stand trial for various crimes. Rice's tone made it clear there would be no trial. "As for you, blind Omega, you've served your purpose. We'd kill you now, but that would be too merciful. No, we'll leave you here. Tied up. Helpless. Unable to warn anyone or follow us. By the time someone finds you, if they ever do, it will be far too late. You're a coward, Rice." Thalen's voice was weak now, the wolfsbane stealing his strength. "The council will answer for this. The people won't. The people will believe what we tell them. That their king was corrupted by a blind witch. That he abandoned his duties for an Omega whore. That he died tragically while hunting down the traitors who poisoned him." Rice moved closer to me again, and I could feel his breath on my face. "Such a shame about the defective Omega who led him astray. History won't even remember your name. Don't touch her." Thalen's words were barely a whisper now, but they carried a promise. "If you hurt her, I will end you. I swear it on every star." The sound of a fist meeting flesh. Thalen's body hitting the floor. Kira's scream. "Take them," Rice ordered. "The king first. Bind him with iron and keep the wolfsbane ready. The child next. Gag her, I'm tired of the noise. Leave the blind one. Make sure those ropes are tight." "No." I struggled violently as I heard them dragging Thalen toward the door. "Thalen. Kira. Myrine." Thalen's voice fading. "Don't give up. Don't." A hard shove from behind sent me sprawling forward onto my stomach. My face hit the floor, and new pain bloomed across my already bruised cheek. Hands checked my bonds, pulling them tighter until I felt my fingers going numb. "Sweet dreams, witch." Rice's boot pressed down on my back, grinding me into the floorboards. "Try not to starve before the wolves find you." Though honestly, I'm not sure which would be more fitting. Then they were gone. The thunder of boots, the crash of my door hanging crooked on broken hinges, the sound of horses and wagons and Kira's muffled crying growing more distant with each passing second. Silence fell over my destroyed cabin like a burial shroud. I lay there for a long moment, face pressed against the floor that smelled of my own blood and the boots of traitors. My wrists screamed in pain. My face throbbed. My entire body shook with shock and rage and fear so intense I could barely breathe. They took him. They took both of them. They took Thalen, who'd looked at me like I mattered. Who'd said my scent felt like coming home. Who'd defended me with the last of his strength against men who would kill him for it. They took Kira, who'd already lost her mother and now faced losing everything else. And they'd left me here to die slowly, helpless and alone, exactly as the world had always wanted me to be. The rage that rose in me then was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It burned through the shock, through the pain, through every instinct that had kept me small and hidden and safe for so many years. What a lie that had been. I'd spent my whole life hiding from the world, and the world had still come for me, had still taken the people I cared about, had still tried to destroy me. Well, not anymore. I rolled onto my side, ignoring the way the movement made my shoulders scream. The ropes were tight, professionally done, meant to hold even a desperate captive. But Rice and his men had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated what desperation could do. I found a broken chair leg with my searching fingers, part of the furniture they'd destroyed in their invasion. The splintered end was sharp enough. I wedged it against the wall and began sawing my bonds against it, back and forth, ignoring the way the rope bit deeper into my wrists, ignoring the warm trickle of blood running down my hands. All the while I memorized every scent they'd left behind, every detail. Rice, tobacco, expensive beard oil, rotting tooth, armor oil with a specific metallic tang. The man who'd held me, leather gloves treated with neat's foot oil, sweat with a sour note that spoke of liver disease, horse scent from a roan mare. The one who'd struck Eldon, fresh blood on his knuckles, cheap wine on his breath, ash from a specific type of wood that only grew near the northern mountains. Each man, each horse, each weapon. I catalogued them all, burning them into my memory with the same precision I used to memorize herbs. The rope frayed, strand by strand. My wrists were slick with blood now, making the work harder, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Finally, the rope snapped. I pulled my hands free with a gasp, my fingers tingling painfully as blood flow returned. For a moment I just sat there, cradling my torn wrists against my chest, breathing hard. Then I stood. My cabin was destroyed. I didn't need to see it to know. I could smell it. Overturned furniture, scattered herbs, broken glass, the wrongness of a sanctuary violated. Everything I'd built. Everything I'd hidden behind. But I wasn't the girl who'd hidden anymore. I moved through the wreckage, my feet knowing every inch of this space. I found a clean cloth and wrapped my wrists. Found my traveling cloak. Found the small knife I used for harvesting herbs and tucked it into my belt. Found my satchel and filled it with what few supplies the traders had left intact. Dried meat, water skin, the strongest herbs I had. Then I stood in the doorway of my ruined home, facing the forest I'd used as a shield for so many years, and made a choice. Could stay here, wait to be found. Let the world think I'd died or disappeared or simply didn't matter. Or I could walk into that forest. Follow the scents burned into my memory. Find Thalen and Kira before Rice's false trial ended in their executions. The old Marine would have chosen safety. Would have chosen survival. Would have chosen to hide. But the old Marine had never had someone call her sent, coming home. Had never saved a king's life twice. Had never felt the kind of rage that could burn through a lifetime of fear. I stepped out of my cabin and into the forest, my nose already picking up the trail. 8 horses, 2 wagons, the distinctive scent markers I'd memorized. The trail was hours old, but it was there. Clear as words to anyone who knew how to read it. I followed their scents into the forest. Into the world I'd spent my life hiding from. Into a fight I had never wanted, but could no longer avoid. Because they'd made one final mistake, more crucial than all the others. They'd left me alive. And I was done being the helpless blind Omega they thought I was. I was going to find them. I was going to save Thalen and Kira. And I was going to make every single one of those traitors regret the day they ever learned my name. The forest had always been my world. Familiar, navigable, safe in its predictability. But tracking 8 horses and 2 wagons through wilderness I'd never traveled was something else entirely. I moved by scent alone, following the trail they'd left like a road only I could see. The crushed undergrowth still held the oil from their wagon wheels. The trees bore traces where horses had brushed against bark. The earth remembered the weight of their passage, releasing scents of disturbed soil and bruised roots. For 3 days I walked. I slept in hollows that smelled clean, avoided areas where predator musk marked territory, drank from streams identified by the mineral content in the air. My feet blistered. My wrists throbbed beneath their bandages. Hunger gnawed at me constantly. The dried meat lasted only 2 days, and foraging while moving at speed was nearly impossible. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because every hour I delayed was an hour closer to whatever fate Rice had planned for Thalen and Kira. On the 4th day, the forest began to change. The wild scents I knew gave way to something else. The smoke of many fires, the accumulated waste of too many people living too close together, the sharp tang of tanneries and smithies and industries I'd never encountered. The capital. The scent hit me like a wall long before I reached the city proper. I stopped at the forest edge, my hand braced against a tree, fighting the nausea rising in my throat. It wasn't just the intensity, it was the layers. Thousands of scents woven together into a tapestry so complex, my mind couldn't parse them all at once. Cooking fires and roasting meat. Human waste and perfume. Animals and leather and metal and stone. Fresh bread and rotting garbage. Flowers in window boxes and chamber pots being emptied into streets. The sick and the healthy, the rich and the poor, the clean and the filthy. All of it swirling together in an olfactory storm that made the Feast of Crowns seem like a gentle breeze. I sank to my knees, pressing my scarf over my nose and mouth, breathing in tiny sips through the fabric. My head spun. My stomach heaved. Every instinct screamed at me to run back into the forest, back to clean air and solitude and safety. Then I remembered Kira's scream as they dragged her away. Thalen's voice, weakened by wolfsbane but still trying to protect me. The promise Rice had made about what would happen to them. I forced myself to stand. I had memorized their scents. Men. 2 horses each. The specific wagons. If I could just find one thread in this impossible tangle and follow it. I wrapped my scarf tighter and stepped out of the forest into the world. The city assaulted me from every direction. Voices shouting, laughing, arguing. Cartwheels on cobblestones. Hammers on anvils. Animals bleating and barking and shrieking. And beneath it all, the constant press of bodies. Too many people in too small a space, their scents crashing over me in waves. I kept to the edges of buildings, one hand trailing along stone walls to guide me. People jostled past, muttering complaints about the blind beggar blocking the way. Someone kicked my ankle, accidentally or deliberately I couldn't tell. Someone else laughed. Focus. I needed to focus. I filtered through the chaos, searching for something familiar. Armor oil. Horse scent. The tobacco Rice chewed. Anything. There a thread of recognition. The leather smell from the roan mare. Faint, probably days old, but present. I followed it down one street, then another, losing it twice and having to backtrack. The sun moved across the sky. I could feel its warmth shifting position on my face. Hours passed. The scent led me to a square that smelled of flowers and clean stone. Too clean. This was a wealthy area, somewhere important. The thread strengthened here, mixed with others I recognized. They'd stopped here. Multiple times. A building loomed ahead. I could tell by the way sound echoed differently, by the shadow falling across my face. Large. Official. The scent of children clung to it, young and frightened and trying to be brave. An orphanage. My heart hammered as I circled the building, searching for a way in that wouldn't attract attention. A blind woman wandering into a royal orphanage would raise questions I couldn't afford to answer. The back wall was stone but old. I could feel the gaps between blocks where mortar had weathered away. And there, near the top, the scent of moving air. A ventilation grate. I'd climbed trees in my forest for years, guided by touch and balance. This was just another kind of tree. I found handholds in the weathered stone and pulled myself up, ignoring the way my healing wrists screamed in protest. Higher, higher, until my fingers found the metal grate. The screws were old, rusted. I worked them loose with my knife, catching the grate before it could fall and clatter against stone. Then I pressed my face to the opening and breathed deep. Children. Dozens of them. Fear and resignation and the particular sadness of those who'd lost everything. And there, beneath layers of other scents. Kira, I whispered into the vent. Kira, it's Myrene. Can you hear me? Silence. Then a tiny gasp from somewhere below. Myrene. Her voice was so small, so broken. You came. You're alive. They said you were dead. I'm here, sweetling. I'm going to get you out. I kept my voice low, barely more than a breath. But I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that? I can try. They took the king. They hurt him really bad. I heard them talking, the guards who brought us here. They said. Her voice caught. They said he's in the North Tower dungeon. They're going to kill him. Soon. The North Tower. Information I desperately needed, but hearing it still felt like a fist around my heart. Did you hear anything else? Anything about when or how many guards? They change every 6 hours. And they said the council is meeting tomorrow night. To decide his fate. Her voice dropped to barely audible. But I think they've already decided. They just want it to look official. Tomorrow night. Less than a day. Kira listened to me carefully. I'm going to get the king out. And then we're coming back for you. Promise. But I need you to stay quiet about this. Can you do that? Yes. A brave little voice, trying so hard not to cry. Myrine. Are you really going to save him? I thought about lying. About giving her false hope to make her feel better. But Kira deserved the truth. I'm going to die trying, I said. Wait for me. I replaced the grate and climbed down, my mind already racing. The North Tower. Guards changing every 6 hours. Council meeting tomorrow night. I needed help. I needed someone who knew the palace layout, who could move through it without raising suspicion, who... A hand clamped over my mouth from behind. I reacted on pure instinct, driving my elbow backward into soft stomach. My attacker grunted and loosened their grip just enough for me to spin, my knife already in my hand, the blade seeking. Myrine. It's me. Froze. That voice. I knew that voice. Eldon. Yes. He was breathing hard, hands raised in surrender even though I couldn't see them. Gods, you're fast. I should have announced myself better. I lowered the knife but didn't sheath it. How did you find me? I didn't. I've been watching the orphanage, trying to find a way to get the girl out. I saw you climb the wall like some kind of spider and hoped it might be you. He paused. Are you hurt? Your wrists. I'm fine. I wasn't, but there wasn't time for that. You escaped. Barely. They were focused on securing Thalen, and I'm apparently not important enough to guard closely. Bitterness colored his words. I've been hiding in the city, trying to gather information. The council has turned most of the royal guard. Anyone loyal to Thalen has been arrested or killed. Kira says he's in the North Tower dungeon. He is. I confirmed it yesterday. Eldon moved closer, and I could smell exhaustion and fear on him. Myrine, it's a fortress. 8 guards on rotation, iron doors, no windows. Even if we could fight our way in, which we can't, they'd kill him before we reached the cell. Then we don't fight our way in. I sheathed my knife and faced where I thought he was standing. You know the palace. There must be another way. Servant passages, supply tunnels, something they're not guarding as heavily. Long pause. Then, there is. But it's dangerous, and you'd have to navigate it blind. He stopped, probably realizing how that sounded. I know what you mean. I allowed myself a grim smile. Dangerous and blind is better than impossible. Tell me. We moved to an alley that smelled less of refuse than the others, and Eldon described the palace in scents I could understand. The kitchens smelled of bread and roasting meat. The servants' quarters smelled of cheap soap and tired bodies. The old supply tunnel that ran from the kitchen cellars to the North Tower smelled of damp stone and rat droppings, abandoned for years, too small and unpleasant for anyone to use. Perfect. I can get you in through the kitchen entrance, Eldon said. I still have my advisor's seal. It should get us past the outer guards if they don't look too closely. From there you follow the tunnel to the tower. The cell is at the top. You'll have to climb the internal stairs. I counted them once. 87 steps. And the guards. That's where I come in. He pressed something metal and cold into my hand. This opens the cell. I stole it from the night captain 2 days ago. He probably hasn't even noticed it's gone yet. While you're in the tunnel, I'll create a distraction. Pull the guards away from the tower. Give you maybe 15 minutes. After that, I'm on my own. I closed my fingers around the key. It was heavy, old iron, and it smelled faintly of the cell it was meant to open. When? Tonight. During the guard change at midnight. It's our best chance. The new shift will be confused. The old shift will want to leave quickly. But Myrine. His hand touched my shoulder. If you're caught, they won't just kill you. They'll make an example of you. The blind Omega who corrupted their king. I know. I turned the key over in my hands, memorizing its weight, its shape, the sound it made against my palm. But I didn't survive 3 days in the wilderness and navigate this nightmare of a city just to give up now. You care about him. It wasn't a question. I thought about denying it. But what was the point? His scent doesn't hurt me, I said quietly. In a world where everything overwhelms me, where every smell is too much, too sharp, too painful, his scent feels like peace, like home. Like maybe I'm not broken after all. I lifted my chin. So yes, care about him. Enough to die trying to save him. Eldon was quiet for a moment. Then, he cares about you too. Before they took him, before the wolfsbane made him too weak to speak, he kept asking about you. Is Myrine safe? Did they hurt her? Promise me you'll find her. His voice roughened. I've served Thalen for 10 years. I've never heard him sound like that about anyone. The words settled around my heart like a promise and a burden all at once. Then we'd better make sure he lives long enough to tell me himself. I tucked the key into my belt, next to my knife. Midnight. The kitchen entrance. Don't be late. I won't. He squeezed my shoulder once, then released me. Myrine, thank you for not giving up on him. I listened to his footsteps fade into the city's chaos, then stood alone in the alley, one hand wrapped around the key, the other pressed against the wall to steady myself. Somewhere above me, in a dungeon I'd never seen, Thalen waited, weakened, probably injured, certainly wondering if anyone would come for him, or if he'd die alone in the dark. I pulled the key from my belt and held it up, feeling the weight of what it represented. Oh, risk, chance. Wait for me, Thalen, I whispered to the uncaring city. I'm coming. And somewhere in the distance, a clock tower began to chime the evening bells. Midnight was 6 hours away. Midnight came with the smell of smoke and distant bells. I crouched in the shadows behind the kitchen entrance, every sense straining for Eldon's signal. The palace loomed above me. I could feel its weight in the way sound echoed off stone, in the sense of power and secrets that seeped from every corner. Somewhere in that darkness, Thalen waited. Somewhere above, in iron chains and cold stone, the man whose scent felt like home was counting down his final hours. If he was even still alive. I pushed the thought away and focused on what I could control. My knife was sharp. My herb pouch contained sleeping powder and pain dullers. The key hung heavy against my ribs. And most importantly, I had memorized every word of Eldon's directions, translated them into a map of scents and sounds only I could follow. A commotion erupted from the front of the palace. Shouting, running feet, the clang of alarm bells. Eldon's distraction. Right on time. I slipped through the kitchen door. The scent hit me immediately. Days of cooking layered into the walls and floors. Onions and garlic, roasted meat, baking bread, the sour smell of wine dregs and vegetable scraps. But beneath it all, the thread I needed. Damp stone, rat droppings, and the particular mustiness of a passage long abandoned. I moved through the kitchen by memory of Eldon's description. Past the great ovens, still radiating heat even this late. Past the preparation tables, smelling of fresh scrubbed wood and lye soap. To the back corner where the floor sloped downward and the air grew colder. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind wine racks. I felt along the wall until my fingers found the gap, then squeezed through into darkness that was no different to me than light. The tunnel was exactly as Eldon described. Narrow, low-ceilinged, and reeking of disuse. I had to crouch to move through it, my hands trailing along slimy walls for guidance. Water dripped somewhere ahead. Things skittered away from my footsteps. Rats, probably, fleeing the blind predator invading their domain. The tunnel sloped upward. My thighs burned with effort, my wounded wrists screaming as I used my hands to help pull myself along. But I didn't slow. Couldn't slow. Eldon had said 15 minutes. I'd already used 5 just getting here. The tunnel ended at a wooden door so old it crumbled at the edges. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Silence. I tested the handle. Unlocked, probably because no one remembered this passage even existed. I eased it open and stepped into a space that smelled of guard sweat, weapon oil, and something else. Something that made my heart clench. Blood. Pain. Despair. Thalen's scent, but wrong. Corrupted by suffering. I was in the tower. The base level, if Eldon's description was accurate. The stairs would be directly ahead. I found them by touch and began to climb. 87 steps. Each one taking me higher into the tower's rotting heart. The smell grew worse with each level. Old stone, iron bars, the accumulated misery of everyone who'd ever been imprisoned here. On the third landing I caught a new scent. Guard sweat, fresh and alert. 2 of them based on the slightly different odors. One chewed mint leaves to stay awake. The other had been drinking. Just enough to dull his senses. Perfect. I pulled the sleeping powder from my pouch, a blend I'd perfected over years of treating my own insomnia. Fast-acting when inhaled, tasteless in water. I'd brought both forms. The guards were talking in low voices, bored and distracted by whatever chaos Eldon had created below. I crept closer, staying to the shadows they couldn't see me in anyway, and waited for my moment. The mint chewer yawned. Think the disturbance is serious. Probably just kitchen fires again. Remember last month? The drinker shifted his weight. I need to piss. Watch the door. Again. You've gone 3 times tonight. Wine goes through me. I'll be quick. The moment his footsteps receded, I moved. A handful of powder blown directly into the mint chewer's face. He gasped, inhaled it reflexively, and I counted. 3 seconds. 5. 7. His knees buckled. I caught him before his armor could clatter against stone and lowered him silently to the floor. When the drinker returned, I was waiting. The same technique, the same result. 2 guards sleeping peacefully. Their breathing deep and even. They'd wake in a few hours with nothing worse than a headache. I relieved one of his water skin and continued upward. The iron door at the top of the stairs was exactly as Eldon had described. With a single guard posted inside. I could smell him through the gaps, hear his breathing, sense the boredom radiating off him like heat. This one would be trickier. I knocked softly on the door. 3 taps, the way Eldon said the relief guard signaled. About damn time, the guard muttered. I heard his key scrape in the lock. Thought you'd forgotten. The door opened. I threw the drugged water directly into his face. He sputtered, tried to yell, got a mouthful of sleeping powder for his trouble. I kicked his knee. Not hard enough to break, just hard enough to fold him. He went down in a heap of armor and confusion, and I was past him before he fully lost consciousness. The cell was at the end of a short corridor. 1 more iron door. 1 more lock. My hands shook as I pulled out the key. This was it. Either Thalen was behind this door, or Eldon's information was wrong, or I was too late, or... The key turned with a grinding click that sounded like thunder in the silence. I pushed the door open. The smell of him hit me first. That storm and pine scent I remembered, now buried under layers of pain and blood and the metallic tang of iron chains. But underneath it all, still there. Still him. Thalen. My voice came out barely a whisper. A sharp intake of breath from the darkness. Then, so quiet I almost missed it. Myrene. My name on his lips broke something inside me. I crossed the cell in 3 strides, my hands finding him by scent and sound, chained to the wall, sitting in water and filth. His breathing labored but steady. I'm here. My hands found his face, mapping the damage. Bruises. Swollen eye. I'm here, I've got you. His chains rattled as he moved, and then his hands, battered and shaking, covered mine. You came. Gods, you actually came. I thought, when they took you, when they said you were dead. I'm not that easy to kill. I was already working on his chains, feeling for the locks. Neither are you, apparently. Myrene. His voice broke. You shouldn't be here. If they catch you, they won't. I found the first lock, applied the key. It didn't fit. Wrong chains. I bit back a curse and started feeling for other locks. Eldon's creating a distraction. We have maybe 10 minutes before. Eldon's alive. Hope surged in his voice. Alive and planning an uprising. I found another lock. The key slid home this time. One chain fell away. We're getting you out of here. Then we're getting Kira. Then we're taking back your kingdom. Just like that. Despite everything, I heard the ghost of a smile in his voice. Just like that. The second lock gave way. Thalen sagged forward and I caught him, supporting his weight. Can you walk? I can do whatever you need me to do. His arm came around my shoulders and even weakened, even broken, I could feel the strength in him. Lead the way. Getting down the stairs was harder than climbing up. Thalen's legs wanted to give out every few steps, forcing me to brace against the wall and hold him upright. But we made it past the sleeping guards, through the landing, down into the tunnel. There's a servant tunnel, I explained as we moved. It leads to the kitchens. From there, an explosion shook the palace. Not Eldon's distraction, something bigger. What? Thalen straightened slightly, his head turning toward the sound. I don't know, but I could smell it now. Smoke and burning wood and something else. Something that made my stomach drop. We need to move faster. We burst out of the tunnel into chaos. The kitchens were filled with smoke. People ran in every direction. Servants, guards, nobles. And cutting through it all, Eldon's voice, sharp with command. The north wing is on fire. All guards to the north wing. Distraction. The madman had set the palace on fire. This way, I urged Thalen, guiding him toward what I hoped was an exit. But then I smelled them. Rice's tobacco, the distinctive armor oil of his men, moving through the smoke like hunting wolves. They're here, I hissed. Rice and at least 6 others. Thalen's grip on my shoulder tightened. I felt his body change. Straightening, squaring, preparing. Get behind me. You can barely stand. Get behind me. His voice carried that alpha command, but this time it wasn't meant to control. It was meant to protect. And then Rice's voice cut through the chaos. Well, the dead king rises. And his blind which came to save him. How touching. I couldn't see the confrontation, but I could smell it. 8 men forming a circle around us, weapons drawn, confidence radiating off them like musk. It's over, Thalen, Rice continued. Even if you somehow fight your way out of here, the council controls the guard. Your supporters are imprisoned or dead. You've lost. Have I? Thalen's voice was different now. Stronger. The weakness from the chains and imprisonment burning away under something far more primal. Tell me, Rice, how many of those guards really support the council? And how many are simply following orders because no one's given them a choice? Doesn't matter. They follow us. Not you. We'll see. Thalen took a step forward and I felt the shift in air pressure, the gathering of power. I am Thalen Vorez, Alpha King of this realm. And I am calling every loyal wolf to stand and be counted. What happened next, I experienced purely through scent and sound. Thalen's alpha power exploded outward. Not the weakened pulse from my cabin, but a true storm of dominance and authority. It rolled through the palace like thunder, like a howl made manifest, calling to every wolf within range. And they answered. I smelled them coming. Guards from every direction. Their sense shifting from confusion to recognition to absolute certainty. Footsteps thundered. Armor clattered. And one by one they entered the courtyard where we stood. Choose, Thalen commanded. His voice resonating with power. Serve traitors who poison children and betray their oaths. Or serve your rightful king. Silence. Terrible, stretching silence. Then the sound of metal hitting stone. A sword dropped in surrender. Another. A wave of sound as weapons fell and knees hit the ground. My king, someone said. Then others joined. My king. My alpha. My king. No. Rice's voice pitched high with panic. He's bewitched. The Omega witch has. I am no witch, I said quietly, stepping out from behind Thalen. I am the woman who saved your king. while you tried to murder him. More swords hitting the ground. More guards choosing sides. Seize the council members, Thalen commanded. Rice first. The rest will answer for their crimes in fair trial. Chaos erupted. Rice and his men trying to fight, trying to flee, but they were outnumbered now. I stayed close to Thalen, my senses tracking every movement, calling out warnings. 2 on your left. Behind you. Rice is running for the east gate. The fight was brutal but brief. Rice's men were skilled, but they faced guards fighting for a king they believed in, led by an alpha whose power burned like a beacon. One by one they fell or surrendered. When the last traitor was in chains, silence fell over the courtyard. Thalen stood in the center, swaying slightly, blood running from a reopened wound on his arm. But his head was high. His scent was pure alpha dominance tempered with justice. And then he turned to me. The courtyard held its breath. Thalen crossed the space between us and took my hand. Not hidden. Not secret. In front of every guard, every servant, every witness to what had just happened. This woman, he said, his voice carrying to every corner, saved my life. Risked everything to rescue me. Walked into fire for a kingdom that had given her nothing but pain. His fingers tightened around mine. And I owe her a debt I can never repay. You owe me nothing, I whispered. I owe you everything. He lifted our joined hands. And I'm asking, in front of my people, in front of the gods, will you stay? Not as a subject, not as a healer, but as my partner, my queen, my equal. The courtyard erupted in whispers. Confusion. An Omega queen. A blind one. But Thalen didn't lower our hands. Didn't back down. I know what I'm asking, he said softer now, meant just for me. I know your forest. Your peace. Your sanctuary. I'm asking you to give it up for a world that will judge you, question you, doubt you. But Myrene. His voice broke. You're the only person who's ever made me feel like I could just breathe. Like I wasn't alone. And if you'll have me, I swear I will spend every day making sure you can breathe too. I stood there, hand in his, feeling the weight of every eye on us. Feeling the wrongness of it. A blind Omega, a broken girl standing beside a king. But I also felt his scent steady and true. Felt the calluses on his hand that matched my own. Felt the way his thumb traced circles on my wrist, right over the rope burns I'd earned saving him. Yes, I whispered. Then louder so everyone could hear. Yes. Thalen pulled me into his arms, and the courtyard erupted in cheers. Tentative at first, then building. And underneath it all, I smelled something new. Oh, not just mine. Not just his. But a kingdom's. Together we had taken it back. Together we would build something new. 6 weeks after the night we took back the palace, I still wasn't used to waking up in a bed that didn't smell like forest moss and solitude. The royal chambers carried scents I was learning to recognize. Beeswax candles instead of tallow, fine linen washed in mild soap, the particular blend of oils Thalen used on his hair. Through the open windows came fresh air carrying pine from the palace gardens, bread from the kitchens, and the distant salt smell of the sea I'd never seen but could now sense on the wind. No heavy perfumes. No crushing crowds. No sensory assaults that left me gasping. Thalen had restructured the entire palace around my needs without me asking. It was both overwhelming and deeply, achingly tender. You're awake early. His voice came from somewhere near the window, warm with sleep and something softer. I was hoping to bring you breakfast before you stirred. I smelled the honey cakes. I sat up, pulling the blanket around myself. Even after weeks, some part of me still expected to wake alone in my cabin, to find all of this had been a beautiful, impossible dream. You didn't have to. I wanted to. The bed dipped as he sat beside me, and his scent wrapped around me like an embrace. Besides, the kitchens are making your favorites now. Apparently the staff has decided that keeping the queen happy is their new primary mission. Queen. The word still felt strange in my mouth, foreign as a language I'd never learned. But when Thalen said it, It sounded less like a title and more like a promise. I'm not sure I'll ever get used to that. I accepted the plate he pressed into my hands, my fingers finding the honey cake by warmth and scent. People bowing, calling me Your Majesty, looking at me like I'm something precious instead of something broken. You were never broken. His hand found mine, threading our fingers together. Just surviving in a world that didn't know how to see you. A knock interrupted whatever I might have said. Thalen called permission to enter, and I smelled Eldon before he spoke, now clean and rested instead of desperate and hunted. Apologies for the interruption. Eldon's voice carried a smile. But there's someone here who's been asking for the Queen every morning for the past week. Kira. I was already standing, the honey cake forgotten. She's in the sitting room. And fair warning, she's brought you flowers. Again. I barely heard the rest. I was already moving toward the door, Thalen's quiet laugh following me as I navigated the chambers I'd memorized by scent and touch. Kira crashed into me the moment I entered the sitting room, her small arms wrapping around my waist with fierce possession. She smelled of soap and fresh bread and the particular sweetness of a child who'd been well-fed and well-loved, so different from the terrified girl in the orphanage. Myrene, I brought you roses from the garden. The yellow ones, because Thalen said those don't smell too strong and won't hurt your head. The words tumbled out in a rush. And I learned a new song on the harp, and the tutors say I'm getting really good. And can I stay for breakfast? Please. My throat tightened. Since the rescue, Kira had been placed with a kind, noble family who'd lost their own daughter years ago. They loved her, spoiled her, gave her everything she needed. But every few days, she appeared at the palace, seeking me out like a lodestone finding north. Of course you can stay. I smoothed her hair back. Longer now, well-brushed, decorated with ribbons. Go sit with Thalen. I'll be right there. I listened to her skip away, then stood there holding the roses she'd brought, breathing in their gentle scent. Yellow roses for friendship. For new beginnings. For a child who'd lost her mother but found someone else to love. She adores you, Eldon said quietly from behind me. Half the palace does, actually. They're calling you the Queen with the wolf's nose. It started as mockery from the council sympathizers, but the people turned it into something else. Badge of honor. The blind queen who can smell truth from lies, who saved their king when everyone else failed. I didn't do it for honor. I turned the roses over in my hands. I did it because he asked for me. Because someone finally needed me instead of tolerating me. Well, they need you now. Eldon moved closer. The healing rooms you designed, the ones with the herb gardens and ventilation systems, they're working. Healers from 3 provinces have come to study your methods. And that scent-based diagnosis system you're teaching. It caught a plague before it could spread last week. You're changing how we approach medicine. I hadn't meant to change anything. I just wanted to help. To use the gift that had isolated me for so long to finally do some good. But somehow it had grown into something larger. A new wing of the palace dedicated to healing, staffed by people I was training to trust their noses, to read scents the way I did. Come, Eldon said. Breakfast is getting cold, and if you make Kira wait much longer, she'll eat all the honey cakes herself. The meal was warm and easy, filled with Kira's chatter about her lessons and Thalen's quiet interjections. This had become our routine, these small moments of normalcy amid the chaos of rebuilding a kingdom. Sometimes other nobles joined us. Sometimes it was just the 4 of us. Either way it felt like family. After Kira left with promises to return tomorrow, Thalen took my hand and led me to the balcony. The morning sun warmed my face, and the wind carried 100 scents I was learning to love instead of fear. I have something for you, he said. A gift. Though I'm not sure you'll like it. Thalen, you've given me everything. I don't need. It's your cabin. He said it quickly, like he'd been nervous about the words. I had it rebuilt. Exactly as it was, but reinforced. Weatherproofed. I thought maybe you'd want a place to retreat to. When the palace becomes too much. When you need silence and forest and I turned and kissed him. Just pressed my lips to his, cutting off the anxious explanation, tasting his surprise and then his smile. "Thank you," I whispered against his mouth, "for understanding that sometimes I'll need to leave. And for making sure I have somewhere to come back to. Always." His arms came around me solid and sure. I fell in love with a woman who lived in the forest, who built a life from nothing, who was brave enough to save a dying king. I won't ask you to stop being her just because you're a queen now. When did you know? Yes. That you loved me. At the feast. His thumb traced my cheekbone. When you whispered, "Don't laugh," like you expected me to mock you. Like you were used to being dismissed. And then you told me about poison no one else could detect, and you looked terrified and defiant all at once, and I thought, this is the bravest person I've ever met. I thought you were just kind. I leaned into his touch. The first person who didn't flinch away from me. I could never flinch from you. He rested his forehead against mine. You're the only person I can breathe around. The only one who doesn't want something from me except me. We stood there as the sun climbed higher, two broken people who'd found each other in the dark and built something whole. I'm still scared, I admitted. That I'll fail. That the council will challenge me. That someone will realize a blind Omega has no business being queen. Then we'll be scared together. His lips brushed my temple. And we'll face them together. You don't have to hide anymore, Myrine. Not from the world. Not from yourself. Not from me. Something in my chest, some last guarded piece of my heart, finally unclenched. I had spent my whole life hiding, building walls, keeping the world at arm's length because letting it close meant pain. But Thalen had walked through every wall I'd built, not by tearing them down, but by making me want to open the doors myself. "Stay with me," he said. Not a command. Question. An invitation. Not as my subject or my savior or my healer. Stay with me as my partner. My equal. My mate. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure the world is a place you can finally breathe in. I thought about my old cabin rebuilt and waiting. About the forest that had been my sanctuary for so long. About the solitude I'd clung to like armor. Then I thought about Kira's laughter. About the healers learning from me. About waking up to honeycakes and Thalen's scent, and a kingdom that was slowly learning to see value in difference instead of shame. I thought about belonging. Yes, I said. Yes to all of it. To you. To this. To whatever comes next. Thalen's answering smile was something I felt more than saw. In the way his scent brightened, in the way his arms tightened around me, in the way his heartbeat steadied beneath my palm. Below us, the palace was waking fully. Servants calling to each other. Guards changing shifts with less tension than they'd held in years. Somewhere in the gardens, someone was singing. The scents of breakfast and flowers and 1,000 small daily miracles rose on the morning air. I breathed it all in. Not fighting the intensity anymore. Not hiding from the overwhelming complexity of life. Just experiencing it. All of it. The sharp and the sweet, the familiar and the new. The painful and the beautiful. For so long I had believed the world was too much for me. That my gift was a curse. That I was broken in some fundamental way that meant I could never truly belong anywhere. But standing here, wrapped in Thalen's arms, smelling the life of a kingdom I'd helped save, feeling the sun warm on my face and the wind carrying promises of tomorrow, I finally understood. I wasn't broken. I had never been broken. I was just waiting. Waiting for a world that could meet me where I was. Waiting for someone who saw my difference as strength instead of weakness. Waiting for the courage to stop hiding and start living. And now, finally, I had found it. "What are you thinking?" Thalen asked, his voice soft against my hair. I smiled and leaned deeper into his embrace, letting myself feel every sensation without fear. The warmth of his body. The strength of his arms. The steady rhythm of his breathing that matched my own. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that once the world overwhelmed me." I turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face, learning the shape of his smile with my fingertips. But now, I whispered, it smells like home. And as Thalen kissed me there on the balcony, with a whole kingdom spread out below us and a future bright with possibility ahead, I finally stopped running from the world. Because I had found the one place where I belonged. Right here. Right now. Right in the center of everything I'd once feared. Boom.